During the next half hour, we'll take a look at how the Renew My Church initiative calls for re-energizing vocations across the Archdiocese of Chicago. We'll talk to Archbishop Blase Cupich and Vocations Director Father Francis Bitterman about the challenges and the hopes of identifying people called to vocations for both ordained and lay ministry. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello, I'm Todd Williamson, Director of the Office for Divine Worship with the Archdiocese of Chicago, and joining me here in the studio, as always, is Archbishop Cupich. Archbishop, it's good to see you.
Todd, always good to be with you.
Thank you very much. Archbishop, we're dedicating this whole show to the topic of vocations. It's in the air, right? May, June, all over the country in every diocese, they're ordaining the class for the new priests. Earlier in May, you ordained permanent deacons. Prior to that, transitional deacons. You've been with the catechists, and so it's in the air. But also in the air for us here in Chicago is the initiative for Renew My Church. Doesn't that give vocations then a very specific lens, a very specific context?
Well, not only a context but a lens, but it's a goal. It has to be one of the priorities as we take up this initiative, Renew My Church. In fact, as we did the survey among the people here with Pentecost and looking at 30,000 responses, vocations emerged as a real priority among our people.
Really? Among those surveyed?
Right. They wanted to make sure that we didn't forget the promotion of vocations to the priesthood and religious life, and to make sure that we make a fulsome effort to invite young people to serve the church in a permanent commitment.
Well, when you look at the Renew My Church, it's one of the main emphases is for parishes and communities to create disciples, right? And who better to lead than those who have identified in themselves the desire to be a disciple?
Well, and I think a good measuring stick on the vitality and the sustainability of any community, of any parish, is whether or not vocations are coming from that community. I think it's always very important to keep in mind that, yes, we're very grateful for those vocations that come to us from other countries, and we really have benefited from that. But we also have to make sure that we don't lose sight of the call that Jesus is issuing to the young people who live here. And for us as a community to ignore that call by not cooperating with it and encouraging young people, I think really misses an opportunity to enrich our archdiocese.
In all of its forms in terms of a vocation, right?
Exactly.
Priesthood, diaconate, religious men and women, as you said. Well, earlier this spring in May, you ordained 5 men here in Chicago to the priesthood. They came from all over, right? Here in the Archdiocese, but also Poland and Mexico. We had somebody from a neighboring state, Michigan. For you personally, Archbishop, what is it like to be the ordaining minister in that sacrament, in that rite?
Well, in the nearly 20 years that I've been a bishop, I would say that this is really at the top of the list of things that I like to do and find enjoyable. And in fact, not only did I ordain the 5 men from the Archdiocese, but 3 others for the Society of Divine Word. So in total, with all the diaconate and priesthood ordinations, I had 6 different ceremonies this past month of June. And so I really had a great time doing that. For me, as I lay hands on the young men who are going to be ordained, it's very clear to me that there's a story in each one of them. A story of a vocation, of those who encouraged them, who fostered it, a story of their own decision and formation and the people who are a part of helping them grow. But there's also a story going forward. It's not only a story of the past but the future. As I think about the many ways that they're going to serve the church, the ways that they're going to celebrate the sacraments, to bring others to Christ. And so it is a moment of great hope for me. It's a celebration of the future, one that I won't see. Their ministry will go on years beyond my own lifetime. Wow. And yet that is what gives me a sense of hope about the future, to know that it is in the hands of those whose hands were anointed by me.
I have to imagine that that's a bit humbling.
It really is, but it's also encouraging. It fills you with a great joy that we really have capable people to lead the church going forward.
Yeah. You mentioned the laying on of hands. Is that the most significant part of the rite of ordination for you?
Well, it's one of the moments in which you call down the Spirit through the prayer and the laying on of hands, but also as they come forward and their hands are anointed. They use those hands to celebrate the sacraments, in which they also raise their hand in the sacrament of reconciliation and providing the freedom from sin.
Anointing with the sick.
And of course then the placing of their hands over the elements during Mass, where the bread and wine are consecrated into the body and blood of Christ. So those are all part of that wonderful ceremony, but then there's a moment in which I hand to them the actual vessels, chalice, the vessels that they'll be using, having them vested as a priest. And then, of course, a sign of peace. All of that complex of symbolic action and word says something to them in a permanent way, including the moment in which they place their hands between mine and promise me and my successors respect and obedience. All of that, I think, comes together in a very powerful way to express their gift of themselves in a very generous way for the service of the church.
Wow. Our Office for Radio and Television, they were at the ordination, and afterwards got to talk to all 5 of the newly ordained priests, where they talked about the significant moments of the ordination rite, as well as talking about where their call for their vocation came from. We have a video here.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
Take a look.
Great.
When I was young, I'd be paying attention to at Mass, and even before I was school age, I'd be creating homilies in my head, and then really, I didn't really start to develop it until college, and then in college I started going to adoration and daily Mass, and that's what brought me in.
To me and my successors.
I think about my parish priests, all the priests who have ministered, the places where I grew up, and how they were influences, how they were both human, but they brought the divine through their ministry. I also think about my grandparents. It's through their love that they taught me how to love Jesus. And so it's through those 2 places where I really credit my vocation personally.
I felt called in 7th grade through the example of good priests in my parish. Even though I resisted through grammar school and high school, eventually in college I re-examined the question and entered the college seminary really wanting to show God how bad of an idea it would be. But he showed me the opposite. And so now here I am, and I love it.
Without fail, the office of priesthood in the presbyteral rank as worthy fellow workers with the order of bishops in caring for the Lord's flock?
I do. It's a mystery of faith, so I can't really explain that why I am who I am right now. But I always first come with my parents. And this is what I want to ask for. All the parents that are going to watch this video, please pray with your children. And then who knows what will happen next. So never stop praying. Each evening before you go to bed, pray with them.
Especially with the most blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God.
Well, I was really completely blind. I was really happy just enjoying the time there at the moment that they were singing the litanies. It was a special moment for me that all the saints, all the people were praying for me at that moment.
it's hard to explain it. It was amazing, and I guess it happens only once a year. Once a year for the archdiocese, but only once in your life. So when we get back over there to the sacristy, I asked, can we do it again next year? They said, we can, but I will be the priest. So it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah.
The ordination ceremony today was just absolutely amazing. It's just an overflowing of grace and the Holy Spirit. And it's just a great joy.
Joy, just total joy and excitement and a little bit of unbelief. Doesn't really feel real yet.
I'm the happiest person in the world right now, and so my immediate reaction is just the joy, and what really stuck out to me was just the prostration of just lying down on the floor, giving yourself over totally to God. It's a great feeling.
I guess the moment when we were receiving the blessings from all the priests coming here, since I do believe I cannot have my own family, but they are going to be my family, my brothers in priesthood. So each of them was putting their hands on my head, and I could feel that we are united in priesthood of Jesus Christ.
Getting my hands anointed was really cool. Just knowing that when people are anointed in baptism, confirmation, they're being set aside for a specific purpose to continue to be disciples. And so when my hands were anointed, that was pretty cool, and knowing that I now have a specific task of being a priest for God's people.
What moved me the most during the ceremony was the prayers of the faithful. When the litany of saints was going on and we're prostrated, and just and also I can't forget the laying on of hands was just amazing as well. It was just full of the Holy Spirit.
Archbishop Cupich said in his homily that priests are not mushrooms; they come from a family. And part of what makes this day special is that my family is here to be with me. My friends are here to be with me and support me on this biggest day of my life.
It's something that I can't explain. It's joyful, that moment for me to give the blessing to my family and to all people who are around me, who were with me since I arrived to Chicago. So it's something really special for me.
Well, it's just cool to be able to impart God's grace on people who mean so much to me and have really helped to form me, more so than the seminary did. And so to be able to share this day with them, it's really a celebration of them more so than the archdiocese or the seminary. It's a celebration of all these families who work together to form us and to make us the priests that we are.
Looking forward to be a good servant and to be a good priest. People always tell me, Father, you'll be a good priest. And I always answer, I guess if I am not a good priest, I cannot be a priest at all. I do believe it is all about Him. It's all about Jesus Christ, not about me. And I always tell them, it's not me, it's Him. So I do hope that they all understand, and soon we'll be praising our God together as one family.
I'm looking forward to being a doctor of souls, to be healing where there needs to be healing. A lot of people are really broken, and they need confession in the Mass and the Eucharist to bring them, and so just being there for them and being a part of that process. And
I'm looking forward to celebrating the Sacrament of Reconciliation most, especially being ordained this year of mercy, to be that pontifex, that bridge to bring God's mercy and healing to people.
I'm looking to work with the people, to share with them all the things that I learned in the seminary. I was in the seminary for 16 years, and I think it was the moment that I need to give them everything that I received.
I can't wait to say Mass. I'm going to say Mass this evening, and I'm really looking forward to it.
You can see that video again and hundreds of other videos about the Archdiocese of Chicago on our YouTube channels, youtube.com/Catholic Chicago and youtube.com/Chicago Cattolico. Archbishop, that was the ordination of priests, but as we mentioned earlier in the show, you've celebrated other ordinations recently in the last couple of months, both transitional deacons, those who are in the process of being ordained a priest, but also you ordained the permanent deacons in English and in Spanish here in the Archdiocese. Talk a little bit about the diaconin, particularly its role of service. We were just talking about the Renew My Church and how important that vocation is.
Well, yes, we had both the transitional and the permanent ones, and of course the transitional ones will be up for ordination of the priesthood next year. But the permanent deacons, the married deacons as they're sometimes called, are so very important to the life of the church. as they help in organizing the pastoral initiatives in any given parish, they do so many wonderful things. They visit the sick, those who are imprisoned. Many of them organize themselves in working to go at night in the streets to feed those who are homeless. The African American deacons every year host an event against violence in a sunrise service that I am very happy to be a part of. So really, wherever the body of Christ is hurting through violence, through hunger, through homelessness, through illness, our deacons are there. They are bringing that healing presence of Christ and provoking our own conscience to make sure that we see ourselves as servants as well.
The deacons are specifically ordained, right? Even the rite of ordination talks about service at the altar, but then service to the poor, service to the community. That's exactly what you were just talking about.
Well, it is. It's the table of the Lord in the Eucharist, but it's the table of the world.
Wow.
And I think that there they bring nourishment on both occasions and make sure that people are fed.
In addition to the diaconate ordinations, you mentioned earlier that you also celebrated the rite of ordination for a number of religious communities here in the Archdiocese. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the vocation to men and women religious in the Archdiocese.
Well, yes, that really is an important aspect that we need to keep alive in the life of the Church, because religious communities contribute so much. And not only do I have a chance to do their ordinations, but we also celebrate the various jubilees of these communities. And I've been pleased to be a part of that for the religious men and women. And also, not only generally for those in the Archdiocese, but some specific ceremonies as well. I was at the Sisters of the Living Word for their 40th anniversary here in the Archdiocese. All of these religious communities do so much that we should never take that for granted. And so I would encourage young men and women to be very serious about looking at joining these communities.
All of this is ways of fleshing out missionary discipleship, which is so much of what Pope Francis talks about, but you too, you quite specifically in regard to our Archdiocese.
Well, that's the heart of Renew My Church, to make sure that we make our parishes vibrant and vital. Many times people have, for instance, explained Renew My Church about in terms of closing parishes or balancing the bottom line, and that really, it seems to me, shortchanges what we're trying to do. What we really want to do is to make sure that the church is more vibrant, alive, that we're using our resources, human and other ways, that are much more stewardship-oriented and also very responsible.
It's about helping others also realize how God is calling them.
Right. And it is. There really isn't any room for complacency in this. All of us have a part to play in it, and our lives are richer when we are allowing ourselves to be instruments of Christ. For us to not do that really undervalues the great potential that's part of our Christian vocation.
In so many ways, it's living out of our baptism.
Right.
Let's not forget the laity and special vocations that we recognize among us. Recently, you were at the certification ceremony for 700, 800 catechists, and then earlier in the spring you were with a special gathering and a prayer for the lay ecclesial ministers in the Archdiocese. Talk about those experiences as the Archbishop.
Well, again, you look at each person coming forward to receive their commission or their diploma, and you see an individual who has invested themselves and their families as well that have supported them in order to make them more effective in being disciples, intentional disciples. So I just have to sit back and marvel at the wonderful sacrifice they're willing to make, because they have obligations at work, with their families, within their marriages, with extended family members, many times with elderly sick people, their neighbors. And yet what really gives them life and helps them do all of those things is their participation in the life of the church, because it centers everything. It gives them a real sense of meaning in all of those endeavors.
Archbishop, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we're going to be joined by Father Francis Bitterman, of course, the director for Vocations, priestly vocations, here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. So for our viewers, stick with us. We'll be right back.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago, where we're talking with Archbishop Blase Cupich. And also joining us for this segment of the program is Father Francis Bitterman, Director of Vocations for the Archdiocese of Chicago. Father Francis, welcome.
Thank you.
I have to admit, I would find it a bit daunting to think of being in your position. An archdiocese of this size, and you are in charge of fostering vocations, identifying vocations, raising vocations to the priesthood. Talk a little bit about that as a ministry.
It's a wonderful grace and privilege to be able to walk with men, helping them discern if this is what God's calling them to. But I'm not in it alone. You know, we rely on all of the priests throughout the Archdiocese, all of our lay people who are there in the parishes that spot the men first and hopefully give those words of encouragement, encourage them to reach out to me. So I'm certainly not doing it alone.
You know, we had a video earlier, right after this year's ordination, hearing from the newly ordained. A number of them talked about how their vocation was identified in their family. Is that an important avenue that you look to in helping to identify vocations?
Oh, absolutely. It all starts in the home. You know, is the faith encouraged, promoted? And as I've discovered, a vocation director makes a huge difference if mom and dad are supportive of the vocation or not.
Mm-hmm. In today's society, many people, we've talked about it on this show, Archbishop, talk about the culture and its secular bent. Does that throw extra challenge in the work of identifying and helping young men identify vocations?
I'd say in the sense that I don't think we've been as good as inviting men to consider the priesthood or women to consider religious life as we used to be back when it was so much more of a Catholic culture. And so in that sense, it's been a little bit harder. But new doors have also opened up. Our Catholic Newman Centers, where we do create wonderful Catholic culture on secular campuses, have been a huge promoter of vocations, to where now we seem to get more men out of our Newman Centers than we do out of our Catholic universities even. Yeah.
Interesting. So the challenges are there. They've always been there, but so are new opportunities.
Absolutely.
Archbishop, in terms of your role as chief shepherd, what do you look for in terms of men who are interested in the priesthood?
Well, first of all, this has been, I think, very well proven understanding. When you begin to see the generosity of young people emerge in some sort of service, there is a chance that the Lord is working in their life already, because it does take a generous heart to respond to a vocation. So I always ask pastors, especially if they have young people who are involved in service projects in the parish, who help with the liturgy, who are involved in religious education, who take their faith seriously, to make sure that they see this as a sign that God can be calling someone. I really believe that young people have a generous heart. We see it all the time. Sometimes, as Father Bitterman said so very clearly, we fail in recognizing and calling that generosity to the next step in their life. It's very easy to be generous in an episodic way, maybe in a momentary way, but in a sustained way, which really brings happiness. The Church has to encourage that and call people forward and say to them, as Jesus did, I'm calling you. The Church needs you. And the more we do that, I think we're going to be better off. And priests have a very important part in this. Statistics show that when priests are more engaged in calling young men to the priesthood, we do a lot better.
Father Francis, is that some of the things that you initially look for? A joyful person who's happy in their faith, who's happy in their life?
Absolutely, because I mean, as a priest, you have to attract people to Christ. So if the person's not joyful or doesn't have that eagerness to go out and serve, that's not a good start.
Yeah.
So those are definitely the characteristics that you look for.
You know, oftentimes people can play the cynical card and look at numbers. But for both of you, how do you see the future of vocations here in the Archdiocese of Chicago?
Well, I think you always go back to the fact that all of this got started with 12. And look where it went. So I believe the Spirit of Christ is present and working in the life of the church and calling people. Yes, we do have challenges in terms of having sufficient number of priests going forward. We have more priests retiring than we do that we're ordaining. And so we're going to have to be quite intentional about that. But that's why Renew My Church has to make sure that we make vocations a real priority. It really is up to us to cooperate with the Spirit of Christ's call in the lives of young people and impress upon them that this can be a very enriching life, an important contribution in which they're going to have a great sense of satisfaction and happiness.
Yeah. Father Francis, what's your take in terms of the future?
I would agree. John Paul II, towards the end of his pontificate, said that he thought we were headed towards a springtime in the church, and I would agree with that. I would say already I'm starting to see the fruits of Renew My Church in that I'm getting a lot of lay people as they hear about, we're going to have to do some closings, some mergings, rethink how we do church here in Chicago. It's really getting them more energized to talk about vocation. And, boy, when was the last time I heard a vocation talk at the parish? And what are we doing about that? And what are the programs? So it's been wonderful to see already a lot of lay people being energized to start speaking of vocations and discipleship, as we talked about.
That's a great point. So then, what else can people in the pew, people in the parishes do to help?
First of all, we have to keep praying for that and pray publicly about it so that young people hear it, for one thing. Secondly, I think parents have to have a reality check. They can't discourage their sons and daughters who have an aspiration, and they really have to see this as a joyful life. We do have seminarians whose heartache is that they are not getting that support.
Really?
So I think we need to really make sure that parents have a reality check that God may be calling their son or daughter. And the other is that this belongs to the whole community. We all have a vested interest in this and need to promote vocations.
Father Francis?
Absolutely. I think also we have wonderful programs. I mean, from the time a man's in high school, we've got our Quigley Scholars High School program. We had 63 men in our program this past year. We have St. Joe's College Seminary. We've got the In-Search program for men out of college. I'm starting a House of Discernment here in Chicago, which I'm very excited about.
We were just talking about that.
Just opening the doors. We already have 4 men who are going to come and live with me for this year as they discern.
That's great.
So from the time men are in high school, we have programs firmly established to help them discern their vocation. So in terms of other dioceses around the country, we really have more to offer and more opportunities than just about anybody.
So it's positive. Things look good.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Father Francis, thank you very much for joining us in this segment. And Archbishop, it's always great to be with you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks so much for all you do.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching. I'm Todd Williamson. We'll see you next time here on Catholic Chicago.
We invite you to watch segments of Catholic Chicago and hundreds of additional Catholic videos at youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter.